Welcome back to Student Academic Success Services workshop on self-editing. This is video 2 in a 3-part series. We are working our way through a self-editing checklist that you can use to help improve the clarity and effectiveness of your writing and identify your own sentence-level errors. In the first video, we reviewed some key points about academic writing and looked at the first category of the checklist, clarity. In this video, we're looking at categories 2 and 3 of the checklist on structure and connectors. This is the paragraph that we're using as an example to work through the self-editing checklist. To review, this is how we fixed the first sentence in the paragraph. Now the sentence reads, "Although climate change is an urgent problem, both behavioral and policy responses have been insufficient to either reduce the volume of greenhouse gas emissions or adapt to a disrupted climate system." For the second category of the checklist, we're going to look at structure. By structure, we mean the grammatical way the sentence is arranged. Let's reread that second sentence of the paragraph. Since significant efforts to raise public awareness of a danger posed by climate change, including work by governments and private corporations, have been made. You may recall from the first video of this series that every sentence in English needs a standalone subject and verb combination, or what we call an independent clause. In this sentence, I have some qualifying information in the middle, including work by governments and private corporations. But even if I take that out, this sentence can still not stand on its own. Listen. Since significant efforts to raise public awareness of a danger posed by climate change have been made. In this sentence, it's the word since that's causing the issue. But if I get rid of it, I have a sentence that can stand on its own. Significant efforts to raise public awareness of a danger posed by climate change, including work by governments and private corporations, have been made. The next thing you might notice, though, is the awkwardness of that qualifying information in the middle. When editing for sentence-level issues, there are some grammar rules that you need to adhere to make your writing grammatical, but a lot of editing is thinking about how you can make your writing more conventional so it matches our preferences. For example, a big one in English is the preference to have the subject and verb at the beginning of the sentence and as close together as possible. It might be grammatically possible to structure a sentence otherwise, but your writing might become more difficult for readers to interpret. It's these kinds of errors that often provoke feedback like awkward or unclear. In this sentence, we can fix the issue simply by switching the order of our sentence elements. Now the sentence reads, "Significant efforts to raise awareness of a danger posed by climate change have been made, including work by governments and private corporations." By bringing our subject, significant efforts to raise public awareness of climate change, right next to our verb, have been made, the sentence becomes much easier to process. The final consideration for this part of the checklist is about agreement. In linguistics, agreement refers to the alignment of words in a sentence based on number or gender. For example, we say, "He walks" with an S, but "they walk" with no S. This is an example of subject-verb agreement. We're going to stretch that idea, though, of agreement to include the logical pairings and combinations of words or phrases, such as articles and verb tenses. For example, if I was telling you about the dinner I had yesterday, I wouldn't say, "I will eat the pasta." I'd say, "I ate the pasta," because the past tense of the verb agrees with the logic of that sentence. In this sentence here, we have an issue with articles. When we say significant efforts to raise public awareness of a danger, we're suggesting that there is just one general danger. We've used the article a, which refers to something general and singular. To improve the logic of this sentence, though, we probably want to refer to more than one danger and clarify that these are not general, but the specific dangers related to climate change. I address this here by changing "a" to "the" and adding an "s" to the word danger. Let's reread the whole sentence in its entirety. Significant efforts to raise public awareness of the dangers posed by climate change have been made, including work by government and private corporations. By creating an independent clause, changing the order of words in the sentence, and addressing the logic and agreement of nouns, we've created a much stronger and much clearer sentence. The third step on this checklist is to look at connectors. By connectors, we are referring to the way different elements within the sentence are brought together and the way the ideas in each sentence connect to the ideas in previous sentences. Let's look at sentence number 3 for its connectors. Transition words and phrases are a common way to show connection between two sentences. For example, you've probably used transitions like "in addition," "on the other hand," and "first of all." Sentence 3 doesn't use a transition word, but in order to evaluate whether one would be effective, we need to consider the sentence that comes before it too. The two sentences read, "Significant efforts to raise public awareness of dangers posed by climate change have been made, including work by governments and private corporations. People need to feel efficacy to solve complex problems. However, the belief that climate change is unstoppable might thwart action even among the concerned." The movement from sentence 2 to sentence 3 feels abrupt. The ideas feel disjointed. In this case, instead of using a single transition word, I'm going to address this issue by using the demonstrative "these" to refer to the subject from the previous sentence and explain how I'm moving between my ideas. Now the sentences read, "Significant efforts to raise public awareness of the dangers posed by climate change have been made, including work by governments and private corporations. These efforts have been insufficient because of people's need to feel efficacy to solve complex problems. However, the belief that climate change is unstoppable might thwart action even among the concerned." You'll notice in addressing my weak connection, I also changed the subject and verb of my sentence. This is an example of how the 4 parts of the checklist work together. Whenever you make a change based on one element of the checklist, you should consider whether any new issues have arisen from the other parts of the checklist. A key way that we show connection in writing that is often taken for granted is through punctuation. Punctuation marks, like periods and commas, are not meaningless symbols to be thrown in at the end for decoration. They convey real meaning to your reader about how you are connecting words. While there's always a certain degree of choice making available to writers, there are many punctuation rules that need to be followed to produce grammatical writing. In this sentence, we see an example of a comma splice, which is when 2 independent sentences are joined together with a comma. To fix this, I've changed the comma before "however" to a semicolon, which is a much more appropriate and grammatical punctuation mark to link 2 complete sentences, especially when using words like "however." However is a type of word called a conjunctive adverb. Other conjunctive adverbs include moreover, additionally, and therefore. These are some of the most common transition words in academic writing. We also use smaller connecting words like and, but, since, and other conjunctions, especially to connect elements within a sentence. Like punctuation, though, it's easy to throw these words into our writing without really thinking about their meaning too much. But each of these words actually represents a distinct idea. Expert writers choose transition words thoughtfully and intentionally to guide their reader and show their thinking. Consider the use of "however" in this sentence. By having it in the middle, I'm setting up a contrast between the first part of my sentence and the second part, which doesn't really make sense. In other words, the belief that climate change is unstoppable is not really in contrast to the fact that efforts have been insufficient. To address this, I want to think about the sentence in connection to the one that came before it. Let's reread those two sentences together once more. Significant efforts to raise public awareness of the dangers posed by climate change have been made, including work by governments and private corporations. These efforts have been insufficient because of people's need to feel efficacy to solve complex problems. However, the belief that climate change is unstoppable might thwart action even among the concerned. After rereading my work and thinking about what I was really trying to say, what the purpose of my writing here was, I can see that I was actually trying to create a contrast between the idea in the second sentence and the idea in the third sentence. So, I'm going to move my conjunctive adverb. Now, the two sentences read like this. Significant efforts to raise public awareness of the dangers posed by climate change have been made, including work by governments and private corporations. However, these efforts have been insufficient because of people's need to feel efficacy to solve complex problems. The belief that climate change is unstoppable might thwart action even among the concerned. Now I am contrasting the fact that efforts have been made with the fact that those efforts have not been sufficient, which makes much more sense. To review, I addressed the connectors in this sentence by making intentional choices about punctuation and transition words, and by thinking about how my sentence relates to the one that came before it. That concludes this video on steps 2 and 3 of the self-editing checklist. Tune into the final video for strategies on how you can edit your own writing for academic vocabulary.